Welcome to the Biz Show, sponsored by InvestQuire. And now, your hosts, Barry and Lisa.
Hey, Lisa, how you doing?
Hi, baby. I'm good. How are you?
I am doing all right.
Aww.
It's a hot day, though, man. I hate the heat.
Well, you got to stay inside then, and the air conditioning feels so good in here.
It does feel good in here, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think everybody's got triple digits around California.
Thankfully, we don't, but we're supposed to be like 95 today. We're close.
Yeah, it gets hot by the beach.
It does.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we want to welcome everybody to the Biz Show, where we explore the latest trends and strategies. We share stories and things that shape the business world.
That's right. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for listening to our show with Lisa and Barry. We're going to dive into this topic that we're doing on human resources.
This is our human resources series, and this one is a pretty interesting topic, kind of tumultuous. Well, tumultuous. There you go.
Tumultuous.
Yes. This one is really about the strategies for HR leaders and business owners on remote workers.
On remote working, which a lot of us are still doing even after COVID. I think that we found it to be either productive in some cases or distracting in others.
Well, we're going to talk about those. We're going to talk about the corporate side and what business owners and corporations and CEOs want, but we're also going to talk about employees
and
what
love
they
your
want.
Feedback. Maybe you could hop on our Facebook Biz Show page and give us some of your feedback. If you're still working from home, how is that working for you?
Yes, definitely.
Let's share some
because
stories.
You know, we all have hybrid lives, right? And, you know, a lot of people are working from home. You and I, you know, we work everywhere, right? So we're in the office, we're at client sites, we're at home. We work 24/7.
What's an office? I didn't even know I had one. It's everywhere.
We're sitting in it right now. What are you talking about?
Car.
Exactly. I think my car sometime is my office more than any place else.
The last podcast was done from the car.
The last podcast we actually threw a disclaimer out there in the front of that thing because the audio was kind of a little messy, but nonetheless, it got done.
A little spotty. That's right. It got done. That's our point.
It got done. You were driving down I-5, and sometimes you felt like you were snorkeling or in the water, scuba diving or something.
Hopefully it didn't give you guys a headache or anything. But that's our point. Like, we can work from anywhere now. So remotely means you're not in a typical office or brick and mortar building, right?
Right. You know, and there are good things and bad things, but let's talk about the evolution of remote working, right? So people have done it for a long time. 20 years. I've you know, back when I was at GE Capital and other companies, there were days that I would work from home, and I'm very productive. I can do that. I really like silence and not a lot going on. So, because I get real deep focused and entrenched in what I'm doing.
But it was frowned upon if you didn't show up for work.
Well,
and punch a time card. I mean, you were in trouble with your boss.
Most of the time I was on a salary, so there never was a time card.
And now people don't even have to get dressed.
I know.
They're in their pajamas working from home.
They are. You know, the biggest things, you know, being you said that, right? I was on a Zoom call the other day, and I had a dress shirt on, right? Yeah. But I had shorts on.
I think during COVID, when this all became, you know,
this is where it started,
that people were not used to having cameras on their computers, or really didn't have the tech savviness to be able to realize that their camera was on, and people were seeing glimpses of naked people.
who knows what going on. I've seen some of the YouTube videos where people walk across like, oh, oops.
So funny.
It is.
Yeah, that was happening very much so because of COVID. Everyone was working from home.
Well, you know, a couple of weeks back, right? You and I were on a podcast, and we were on Zoom, and you had your maintenance guy come in.
Yes.
And I saw him walking around in the background and everything. And I mean, nothing was going on. I'm just saying that you see things that may be
distracting.
Yeah.
There could be a dog barking. Somebody could show up at your door, like that was the case for me. Or your son could be like in the background making faces and you didn't realize it.
It's making faces. This is true. Well, anyways, you know, the history of really this had come from
the COVID years. So 2020.
2020.
Yeah. The
right.
last 3 to 4 years. ago is when it all began.
Right.
The lockdowns, oh my gosh, that forced companies to adapt very quickly and install Zoom on their phones and on their computers and create accounts and subscriptions.
You know, you're right. Technology was a big piece of this, right? The lockdown, everybody had to stay home, but yet corporate America and business still had to run. So how can you get that done if your employee is sitting at their house because they're not allowed to be out anywhere,
right?
Including yourself. So we adapted.
Yeah.
And we adapted well.
So there was a lack of supervision in that case, right?
Well, yeah, but everyone was just trying to figure it out, right? How are we going to make this work? And we did make it work, you know, but it wasn't a permanent solution, right? It was a temporary solution, a Band-Aid to put over the situation at the moment.
But it's not exactly temporary because we're still doing it.
Well, the problem is when you give somebody something, it's hard to take something away from them, right?
Yeah.
And so
now there's sort of a hybrid.
With this thing, now there's a battle going on between corporate and employees and work-life balance and all this other stuff. And who's right and who's wrong, that remains to be seen. And we're not here to judge either way. Mm-hmm. We're just explaining the facts on both sides of which way it goes down, right?
Right. So the remote working from home situation is very prevalent still.
It is very prevalent, and 82%, there was a study done, and the study was done by Gardner Group, which is a big group that does polling and studies and stuff like that. 82% of corporate America is entertaining the ideal and open to allowing remote work at least part-time, right?
Right.
So maybe you come in the office 3 days a week and you work 2 days from week from home, whatever the case might be. A lot of them are leaning that way.
Mm-hmm. To provide the flexibility
But there are some that are not. And a lot of them are the big corporations, right? Microsoft, Dell, Apple, Google are all like, get your rear ends back in the office.
Right.
And I get that. And there's reasons for that. But, the shift is reshaping, or this remote is shaping the way we do business.
Yeah, there still has to be clear guidelines and hours of work, right?
Right, policies and procedures. And that's one of the things that corporate is really dead set against, and they're trying to control that because they don't feel they're getting their money's worth, right? They're paying you a salary to work 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, 160 hours a month.
Well, the proof is always in the pudding. What are they producing, right?
Well, that's the problem. They're not producing.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are saying, oh, yeah, but we're doing this, we're doing that. Okay,
right.
Show
Nothing's
me.
being done.
Nothing's being done.
There's no results.
However, the blame goes on both sides because corporate needs to do a better job of putting the policies in place, giving the guideline, and putting some type of a measurable...
and doing those performance reviews like we talked about last week.
Last week we talked about performance reviews, right? Yeah. So
definitely nip it in the bud if that's happening in your company. I know I have a girlfriend that works for a corporation. Actually, she is in human resources herself. And her company has a data security measure to see if they're being logged in from their remote home address, which the company would have on file.
There's software to do that. And we're going to talk about the software here in just a few minutes.
From the beach in Newport Beach.
She's
got to be at her home.
It shows a geographical location. It also shows how productive you are on your keyboard. You can't just sit there and wiggle your mouse every couple minutes. Right. It actually logs keyboard strokes, what you're clicking on and stuff like that. So is Big Brother watching? Well, if you're a remote worker, absolutely they are.
Right.
If they're interested in that.
Most definitely.
And that's because a lot of people have abused it and made it bad for everybody. Right. And that's where the battle in itself extends from, is the fact that those bad apples have went home and now they're watching Oprah and soap operas and doing the ironing and watching the kids and going to the softball games when they're supposed to be home working.
Yes, exactly.
And they're not.
Right.
And corporate America has gotten tired of it because productivity has dropped drastically.
Yes, and it's hard to justify a six-figure salary for somebody that isn't, sitting there at least providing an 8-hour day.
True. And not only that, but there's other things involved in that too, right? A collaboration with your colleagues, right?
Coworkers.
Brainstorming and stuff like that. You and I are in the office here. We brainstorm about stuff all the time when we're together. Brainstorming still happens when we're remote, but not as often.
Right.
And we want those creative juices flowing.
Right.
So that
questions don't get answered as fast, right?
And that's the other part is access to employees, managers and stuff like that. If they need an answer, they can't walk down the hallway to your cubicle or your office and ask you, hey, what's going on with this? You ain't there. So they pick up the phone, call you, they have to leave a voicemail. They type you in a chat, you may respond, you may not respond, right? So, what's the solution? That's just from the corporate side, right? But there's, if a company does really good at dropping down policies and stuff like that, it goes
could be monitored, yes.
It goes a lot easier.
And it could be very successful.
One of the other big things is that the corporations, they lose their company culture, right? And, there's a whole ecosystem in a corporation. And there's a driving force that pushes that company forward into whether it's selling services or products or whatever the case might be. And a lot of that is missed. So technology comes into play for that, right? And the technology, we're talking about, team building events, and we're talking about using, Microsoft Teams, Slack, Zoom. You and I use Zoom all the time, right?
Right.
But here's the deal. We know, for instance, with Zoom, you got a 40-minute limit. And once you hit that 40-minute limit, you're done.
Right. As I mentioned earlier, then you'll have to subscribe for a higher level platform.
Right. And so that's $13 a month. On the low end, it's $13 a month per user.
Yeah.
So if you're a small business owner and this is what you have to do, you're now spending, let's say you got 10 employees, you're spending $130 a month just for Zoom, which may or may not get used.
Right.
But when it does, you go past that 40 minutes and
it's another business expense. Absolutely.
It is a business expense. Think of somebody who has got 100 employees. They're spending $1,300 a month on that. And if you got a company that's got 1,000 employees, well, guess what? They're spending $13,000 a month.
I guess the benefit of Zoom and doing these types of online meetings is that you could record them, right? So people are not having to take notes. They could actually look back and listen back at the recording.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and we do that when we have guests on. If we're doing through Zoom because they might not physically be there, we'll record the Zoom meeting. But that poses problems for us in the podcast, or for me in the podcast when we're doing the editing, because then I only have one track with everybody's voice on that track. So I can't sequence or single out a particular voice. For instance, right now, you and I, we're in and doing this podcast together. So you have your own track and I have my own track. So if you're too soft or something, I can bump your volume up. If I'm too loud, I can push my volume down. But in a Zoom call, we're both on the same track. I can't do anything.
Right. And then there's also the worry of like data breach, because now your information, your voices, your everything that you have being logged in through Zoom could potentially be breached.
Well, you're right. And that's one of our big topics is the breaching, right? Because there's a lot of companies that have had those breaches. And those breaches, big companies, Visa, MasterCard, Microsoft, Google.
Yeah, there's too much going on out in the universe, all these radioactive waves and technology, and so eventually something.
We need a Faraday cage around us, right, to keep all that bombardment
right
out. So again, those companies then they need to spend a lot of money in order to have all these things, right? And then on top of it, and that's just the technology. Then you add the security on top of it, which then brings a whole nother layer of expenses, because you're probably going to run a VPN on that. And if you're going to run a VPN, that costs money.
I think that would be a great episode to have, Barry, because it's just such an important topic, especially with the recent software glitch that has affected air travel, and one of my friends' bank accounts got compromised. And so I think we should have a guest speaker that we have. One of our clients is actually a security management for companies, online platforms. And I think he'd be great to talk to, just to educate us on what is really going on behind the scenes and how he could help protect our businesses.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
The thing is you're right. Just last week. No, it was this week. No, it was Friday. Last Friday. A company called CrowdStrike did an update for their security software. And that update for the security software broke the internet, right? And for all
Chase
Windows,
Bank was involved or compromised.
all the banks, Wells Fargo, Chase, all the airlines, hospitals had to cancel surgeries and stuff like that.
It's pretty scary.
It broke the internet.
Yeah.
And that leads us to think about the internet and just how vulnerable it is. And in one particular instance, everything went kaput.
Yeah.
Right? And so that probably needs to be redesigned and rethought in regards to how can we protect the internet from going down just because somebody did a bad update. Mm-hmm. Turned out it wasn't malicious whatsoever at all. It was just stupidity.
Which is good, yeah.
And the stupidity part is not verifying, double verifying, triple verifying, and maybe even running it through AI and let AI verify it before you put the code out.
Yep.
AI is pretty good at coding, surprisingly enough. But the problem is this company didn't do that, right? I'm sure they had their checks and balances, don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day,
invested for sure.
we all were without.
Yeah.
My wife, Tammy, she had to sit around for 6 hours doing nothing.
Oh, my goodness.
She sat on her phone playing games because everything was down.
Yeah.
Her computer was blue screen. But they didn't send them home. So, big thing. So, the next part of this thing then is besides the security, right?
You kind of touched on that. Yeah, the productivity.
Yeah, the productivity and how companies now, if you're going to work from home, they're going to monitor you.
Well, not only are we having to invest in more programs like Microsoft Teams and Google Zooms and whatnot, but we have to invest in software for productivity tracking.
Well, so the IT of corporate America is going to install software. One of them is, OKR, right? Which is objectives and key results. And basically, they're going to install that on your laptop and make sure that they can see what you're doing,
you and whatnot,
where you're going and what you're doing and stuff like that.
Monday.com and Workday, they offer features for tracking project milestones,
employee
performance, providing feedback, right?
Exactly.
So these tools enable the managers to monitor the productivity without micromanaging them, because then they're just kind of viewing it at their will.
Well, and that's the dilemma, right? Because now employees are like, well, you're big brother and you're watching us. Well, yeah, because we have to make sure we're getting... Yeah, you're being babysat, right? That's what your manager is a glorified babysitter. So you're still being babysat. That's not going to go away. But let's do this. Let's talk about the pros and cons, all right? And let's talk about for corporations first, right? So for corporations, there is some pros, right? And there's a cost savings, right? But it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Office space, utilities can go down, things like that. So they get a little bit of offset of that. But think about this. A lot of companies, they already have a lease. It could be a 5-year, 10-year lease on the building.
Right.
That doesn't go away. So all of a sudden, you got this big building that holds 1,000 employees.
And not utilizing it as
and
often.
Now you've only got 100 employees in there.
Yeah.
So we got all this wasted space, but you have to still pay
utilities,
it. So that frustrates the CFO and the COO and the COO because they're spending $100,000 a month on this office space and they're stuck with it. So you need to come back in and work in the office so that they feel like they're getting their money's worth. But also, Now with this, they have access to additional talent, right? If you have remote workers, you don't have to be stuck in a geographical location looking for somebody. They can work anywhere in the world.
Right.
Right?
Exactly. A lot of these high executives they're working in a different state than where their company is located.
Yeah. However, I've seen stories about on the news and in people posting in TikTok and Instagram where they're upset because I know some employees and friends of mine actually moved out of state because they went remote and they moved to Idaho. And now their company's saying, we want you back in the office. They're like, well, I live over here. And the company's like, well, that's too bad. You need to come back or go to work, or you need to find a new job.
I have a client working for Apple that exactly the same thing is happening. They want her back local.
Yeah.
So she'll be in the office now 3 days a week where she was working remotely all 5 days.
Yeah.
So now she has to move back from Texas. And so we're in the process of finding her property. But yeah, that's happening very, very much lately.
Yeah, it is. And, so there's also the employee retention, right? So, and that's in the sake that because of the work-life balance and, employees being able to have a little bit more freedom and satisfaction in that, they stick around longer, right? Yep. I could take this job and I might make, $50,000 or $75,000 a year. And I could take this other job making the same, but now I got to drive to work and into the office every day. So I have incurred costs.
Expense of car maintenance and gas
fuel,
prices.
especially in California, right?
Crazy high right now.
Yes.
Yeah, and then they're having to eat out for lunch, perhaps, instead of going into their kitchen and cook a quick sandwich.
Yeah. Wait, you cook sandwiches? I just make mine.
Well, we heat them up. We like them the toasted bread. Yeah.
I do too. The cons on that from the corporate side is team cohesiveness, right? Again, we touched about this already, but you don't get the camaraderie and you don't get the brainstorming or anything like that like you would normally get if you were face to face, like you and I are right now, right? And we're bouncing stuff off of each other left and right.
Right.
But we don't do that when I'm working from home and you're working from home.
I know.
Because
it's the detachment for sure.
Yeah. So that's a con. The other is the security risk we talked about, right?
Yes, we did bring that up.
And there are several companies, and let me name a few here, right? Twitter, Microsoft, Rockstar. I don't know, Rockstar, if you know, that's the company that makes GTA and Red Dead Redemption, Capital One, and Zoom. They have all had information leaks because of employees who've worked remote. For instance, I'll just use Rockstar as an example, right? They got a new video game coming out called GTA 6. Mm-hmm. All the employees are leaking stuff, or people have been hacked and they're getting stuff leaked. And now all this information's out there. Oh, hey, this is what's going on with this. And that's all proprietary information and
right.
top secret to them.
Yes.
Right? Microsoft has had a lot of breaches lately themselves because of remote workers. The thing is this, an employee might be using their own computer, but even so, the company's going to want to install security and the tracking software and stuff like that on it. But, it's only good in who says they can't turn it off when they get home. So those are things that is a con, right? And then, so now let's talk about employees, right? The pros and cons for employees. And the best one for employees is what?
Well, we talked about this. We talked about their savings for gas and
right.
I think we've already discussed that.
Flexibility and savings, those are big things.
Right.
And then a preferred environment, their home, their couch, their coffee table, their dining room table. Perhaps they might have a home office.
Maybe it's less stressful.
That's just good. Yeah, you can go to work in your underwear. Right? As we discussed earlier. Yeah. Just make sure if you have a Zoom meeting that you put something on.
Right.
But the cons, right? So the cons, number one, is the biggest thing is isolation, right? A lot of companies actually, believe it or not, start to feel overwhelmed because they feel isolated, alone. And this brings up a whole different thing about isolation. There's companies right now that are saying, okay, fine. If you want to work from home, you can work from home. However, you will never get a raise and you never will be promoted, right? A lot of companies have done that. Mm-hmm. Dell just announced it 2-3 weeks ago. Okay, Michael Dell gave up and says, I'm done trying to fight with you guys. If you want to work from home, you get to work from home.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get any more raises. You're at where you're at. You're going to stay there. And, if promotions come up, we're not looking at you.
Right.
We're looking for people that are in the office.
Yeah.
And I can understand that from a corporate standpoint of view. As you move up in the ranks, you become a manager, you get more people to manage. I see both sides of it. I don't know, what's right or wrong. I can tell you some of my experiences in the past. But, there are things that are out of your control when you're remote.
Yeah, and then there's no boundaries when you're working at home because you could be working after business hours thinking, oh, I didn't get enough done. And then it's like facing you in the kitchen or on your office desk in your bedroom. And then you're like, oh, I could get that done right now and tomorrow will be less stressful. So then you're having no boundaries with your work schedule and you're getting burnt out.
Yes.
And you're blurring the lines of work days and off days.
Well, there's a legal problem too, right? With companies and employees, right? I'm going to talk about the state of California now, but as an employee, if you work an 8-hour day, right, you have to take a lunch break before the 6th hour. Mm-hmm. All right. And then you need to take your lunch break and then you can continue on if you're a hourly employee. Mm-hmm. That said, how do companies monitor that? They don't know what, and if you get up like me, I'm an early riser, right? So chances are real good. I'm going to jump on and start working at 5 a.m. I do.
Well, right. Most corporations are paying salaries and not hourly, but so it gets,
it is,
maybe
but
you're not even stopping for a lunch break.
But even if you're on a salary, you still have to, take that lunch break, right?
Right.
But they can't monitor that. So do they conform in state regulations for labor laws? They don't know. Yeah. Because they don't know when you're doing it, right? So that kind of really blurs the lines there from a legal perspective.
Another problem could be your technology. Maybe it's not reliable at home or you have an interference or an outage in the neighborhood. And then you're not able to do any work because you could say, oh, I couldn't work today because my internet's not working.
Well, that happened last Friday, right?
Yes.
And it's funny because where I live, last week, it wasn't Friday, it was a few days prior to, I think it was last Wednesday or something, our power went out. Mm-hmm. Which is unusual. I mean, it's very, very stable.
Happens a lot in California.
For where I live, I think I've been here 7 years now and it's gone out twice.
Oh, wow.
And that's it.
It happens a lot in Northern California. Yes,
brownouts and stuff like that. But if that's the case, you're not working, right? Because your laptop and your computer, it's not going to have internet until the power comes back up because routers and everything else are down.
So another concern of remote work is just employees taking advantage of the flexibility and then, like we talked about, them abusing it and ruining it for everyone, which will tighten up the measures that corporations are taking in monitoring the productivity of their employees. Because they're not working the agreed upon hours and they're being unresponsive. Maybe their laptops are not, the mouse is not being moved, and maybe they haven't answered an email as fast as the team manager or whatnot expects somebody to answer. Because if you're sitting there, you're going to answer it, right?
Let me tell you a story.
And you'll be readily available.
Right, exactly. Let me tell you a story. So I won't mention names, but where my wife works, her company, they have a couple remote employees. And customers have started complaining they can never get a hold of them. What's going on with this? What's going on with that? They also are part of a call center, and calls come in and they need to answer those calls. And come to find out, for a 3-month period, they didn't answer one call.
Oh, wow.
And so everyone else in the call center had to pick up the slack, but nobody knew.
But they're paying for this call center service.
Yes.
Wow.
So
they just thought that the call center was busy, so the call would roll over and people at the office would have to pick it up.
Well, yeah, it's certain people that pick up those phones anyway.
Right.
And that person happened to be on one of them, but he was a remote person, so he just wasn't picking
Answering
up.
them.
Right. And so the calls would just stay there, and then the next person in line would pick it up.
Well, that's what we're talking about. People are not working when they should be.
And this is the people that ruin it for everybody else.
Yes. So we can mitigate these risks with having performance reviews, clear expectations, management and productivity tracking, and good communication between you and your team, right?
Right. Let's just recap, right? We've and you kind of just did actually, right? Those are all the things that in order to make this work and work well have to happen. And again, it's a battle. Corporate wants everybody back in the office because they have expenses, the office building, but employees want to work from home for the flexibility and stuff like that. I get it. My experiences are I have had employees who've worked from home, and some of them, awesome. You can reach them all the time. They're Johnny on the spot. They get their work done. But then there's others, you're chasing them down. Where are you?
Yeah.
You think you hear the ocean in the background.
Let's not ruin it for everyone. You guys, we need to have that balance of working from home sometimes when we can be very productive without the distractions in an office, and also being able to go to the office to be collaborative with your colleagues and your team. And we want to be able to go to the office too on some of the days of the week to be collaborative with our colleagues at the office. So having that balance is key. And I think that's what our point that we're trying to drive home is, to make sure that we have integrity with the hours that we're supposed to be working and stay productive if we are working from home. And then also be willing to drive to work when you are required to do so that you can have the collaboration amongst your fellow employees and your management.
Yep. Very good. Well, that kind of wraps this up for today.
Thank you for listening.
If you guys have any questions, please go to our Facebook group page, The Biz Show, and put down, drop your answers down there. Lisa and I'll be more than happy to answer it. I've got a lot of stories I can share with you that have worked out well and some that haven't worked out so well.
Yeah, it's fun to share our stories online.
It is.
We hope to hear from you.
Don't forget, you can also reach us at investquire.com. Lisa, you can find both Lisa and I there. And then please subscribe and, look forward to seeing you guys in additional podcasts down the road.
Have a great week.
Bye.